You were never supposed to hear this. What they found behind that wall wasn't meant for daylight. Spring 1869, Manhattan. The wrecking crew wasn't supposed to dig that deep. The Blessed Widow's Christian home was being demolished, a relic of another era, forgotten by the city that once praised it. But when a sledgehammer hit hollow stone in the basement, the workers paused. Dust curled in the air like the breath of a buried secret. Behind that wall were 52 coffins, each one sealed, each one labeled, each one holding the bones of a woman who, according to public record, had never died. Their names had been erased, their stories scrubbed, but inside those caskets, the truth lingered, cold, mute, and wearing pearls. Beside every skeleton was a ledger, written in the same neat feminine handwriting. Each entry listed a woman's net worth to the exact cent. Every ring, every estate, every inheritance, tallied like inventory. This was no coincidence. This was design. And the world, your world, applauded it for 22 years. You live in a society trained to believe in institutions, trained to kneel at the feet of charity, of faith, of good intentions. But what if the very systems you were taught to trust were designed to consume you whole? What if the institutions weren't built to save the weak, but to harvest them? The Blessed Widow's Christian home wasn't a sanctuary. It was a feeding ground. This is not a ghost story. It's a blueprint, a ritual in bureaucracy and benevolence, a mask worn by wolves. And behind it all, Margaret O'Brien, revered matron, celebrated caretaker. But history's ink can lie, and in her shadow a truth rotted, patient and silent, until the wall cracked open and bled out its shame. You're not watching this by accident. Something in you wants to know, wants to tear back the veil. Good, but know this. Once you see behind the curtain, you don't come back. You can't unknow what's coming. And I promise you, we haven't even begun to fall yet. Beat, slow fade into black. Ominous strings begin to swell. Welcome to the descent, to the... They wore white gloves when they murdered them. Let that sink in. Every act, every decision, every lie whispered into the ears of these forgotten women was cloaked in sanctity. Not brutality, not blood, but cleanliness. A surgical kind of death, one so well disguised, so spiritually sterilized that it looked like compassion. That's how deep the manipulation ran. The Blessed Widow's Christian home was a machine of psychological control. It didn't need chains. It didn't need locks. It used hymns. It used scripture. It used structure. This is what they don't want you to understand. The most effective prisons are the ones you never realize you're in. Margaret O'Brien wasn't just running a scam. She was perfecting an ideological crucible, a system that could turn a living, breathing woman into a compliant ghost long before her body was buried. They were told they were chosen, special, that God had led them here. They were asked not just for their money, but for their testimonies, their life stories, their confessions. Every resident was gently broken down, one detail at a time, through endless interviews cloaked as spiritual counseling. The women were stripped of their autonomy in increments, like a surgeon removing organs, always with gentle hands, always with a smile. Let me show you how it worked. New residents were subjected to guided surrender. It began as a prayer circle. Then it became journaling exercises with Catherine Kelly, who cataloged every trauma, every regret, every unresolved guilt. These details were then used, strategically, during sermons by Father Walsh. He would weave their own words back into scripture. "You are the widow of Zarephath," he would say to a grieving woman whose husband had died by suicide. God has taken your bread, but he will send a prophet. They thought they were being healed, but they were being conditioned. In time, the women began to believe their suffering had purpose only if they surrendered their worldly burdens, their homes, their savings, their jewelry, their names. A ledger was kept, of course, but not just for assets. No, there was a second column. Compliance level. Scored 1 to 5. The women who scored 5s, they vanished first. This wasn't a charity, it was a harvest, and no one, not the churches, not the city, not the law, ever questioned why 52 rooms were reassigned over and over, with no death certificates filed. Because you don't question the holy. But I'm not holy, and neither are you. You're waking up now, aren't you? We've just pulled back the first veil. Behind it waits a truth that feeds off silence. We keep going, or we turn back now. Choose, because the descent gets steeper from here. Let me tell you about Room 14, not the official one listed in the pamphlets, not the sun-soaked prayer suite with the soft blue curtains and stitched psalms on the wall. I mean the real Room 14, the one beneath it. You wouldn't know it was there unless you followed the sound. A low, whirring hum, almost mechanical, like an old freezer. It came through the vents at night, just loud enough to keep you awake if you were still in the early stages of surrender. Sister Gloria was the first to notice it. She'd only been there 2 weeks. Widow, 62, lost her pension to a predatory annuity scam. Came to the Blessed Widow's home looking for peace. Instead, she found patterns. She said the morning toast always came in 13s, one survivor recalled, even when only 9 of us were in the kitchen. And then there were the names on the whiteboard, duties and prayer rotations. One day, Elaine H. assigned to dish duty, except there was no Elaine H. Not anymore. She passed on to glory, they were told, but her clothes still hung in the communal closet. Her toothbrush was still wet. Sister Gloria started writing things down. She wasn't supposed to. Journals were supposed to be shared, not hidden. That was the rule. So when Gloria went missing, they burned her mattress before anyone could ask questions. Not metaphorically, literally. Out back, behind the chapel, they said it was mold. But ashes don't lie. Neither did the note she tucked under the chapel altar before they took her. Room 14 has no windows. They sing in there, but it's not a hymn. Let that sentence sit in your lungs. Because it wasn't just Room 14, there were 7 like it. Converted storm shelters, retrofitted with soundproofing, drainage holes, and steel beds that didn't match any catalog. That's where the high scorers went after their final anointing. They didn't just die. They were processed. Found a blueprint buried in the county archives. It had been altered, sloppily. But you could still make out the original intent of the building. Emergency fallout shelter, constructed in 1956, decommissioned in 1983, sold for $1 to a private religious trust in 1994. That trust, Morning Tide Renewal Ministries. A shell organization. Guess who's on the board? Margaret O'Brien, Catherine Kellys, and a man named Jude Ashford. You haven't heard that name yet, but you will. He doesn't run prayer circles. He runs the cleanup crews. Because when the women stopped complying, when something went wrong, Jude made sure no one heard the screaming. Don't believe me? Ask the plumber who found a femur in the septic tank in 2019. He filed a report. He was fired 2 days later. That report was sealed, but not to me. I have it. And soon, so will you, because the deeper we go, the harder it is for them to cover their tracks. We're past the point of no return. No one ever saw Jude arrive. That was his talent. He wasn't on the payroll. He didn't sign the guest book. No photo ID, no sermons, no communion. But the moment something unmanageable happened, whispers, resistance, blood, he was there, always in black, always polite. The women called him the visiting deacon. That's how he introduced himself, said he was there to assist with transitions. No one ever asked what that meant. They were too scared to. I found a copy of his intake logs unredacted for 2017 through 2021, cross-referenced them with a list of women who graduated to the kingdom during those years. Here's the problem. The same name appears on site 43 times. The same week, 43 different women disappeared. Each death reported as natural decline. Each body cremated within 12 hours. Each ash canister delivered to families with the same handwritten tag. Returned to light, dear D. D, as in deacon, or disposed. Jude didn't sign anything. But I spoke to a nurse who used to work in the hospice annex, an annex that didn't officially exist. They called it the garden. She lasted 3 months. Then she ran. I only saw him once. She told me he was humming while he cleaned the sheets, but the bed was still occupied. I asked her what she meant. Her hands started to shake. He put his hand on the woman's forehead and just waited. Didn't say a word, no prayer, no injection, just waited until her breathing stopped. Then he made the sign of the cross and rolled the body away. The thing about Jude is there are no public records, no driver's license, no tax ID. But dig deeper and you find a contractor's badge from a dissolved company in New Mexico, hazardous materials, special clearance, and a history with Morningtide that goes back further than any of the women ever realized. He wasn't a deacon. He was a closer, a spiritual custodian, aimed in containment, silence, and disappearances. A man who understood that not all revolts are loud. Some start with a diary, or a whispered hymn out of tune, or a look that lingers too long when someone says, "Room 14. Why does this matter? Because I have a recording from April 3rd, 2020, late at night, captured by a shortwave radio technician who lived 3 miles from the compound. Thought he was picking up an illegal broadcast. What he caught instead, Jude, reading a psalm, backwards, over screams. You'll hear it soon, I promise. But you need to be ready first, because once you hear his voice, you don't forget it. And neither did they. The first fire was ruled an accident, electrical fault, flawed wiring, a freak surge during a late-night vigil. That's what the official report said. They found melted wires, charred pews, smoke damage that stretched all the way to the southern wall of the dormitory annex. But here's what they didn't mention. The fire started in the baptismal tank. There were no candles lit, and every exit had been bolted shut from the outside. 5 women died that night, all of them part of what the inner council called the frail choir, a group of terminal patients who'd been promised accelerated passage to the kingdom through the final rites. The coroner's report says they burned in place. No signs of struggle. But that's not what Sister Miriam told me. She was the first to respond. Says she found one woman's fingernails embedded in the chapel doorframe. Another had clawed at the stained glass window until her palms split open. They didn't go quietly, she whispered. Whatever they saw, they tried to escape it. Then she showed me the wall behind the pulpit. Scorched into the wood, still faintly visible years later, was a single word: liar. The chapel was rebuilt in 11 days. Brand new wiring, ash-blessed timber, reinforced doors, cameras installed, though oddly none of them were ever connected to a live feed. Just recorded, stored, forgotten, until fire number 2. This one was harder to explain because it happened during a thunderstorm, no open flames, no services. And this time, the security logs showed that no one had entered the building in over 48 hours. But the fire still started, right at the pulpit, right where that word had once been burned in. And when firefighters arrived, they found something impossible. No signs of ignition, no accelerant, just ash, piled in neat rows, as if someone had arranged it like pews. They never rebuilt the chap. Yell again. The foundation still sits there, cracked and moss-covered. The Morningtide Restoration Trust lists it as a memorial zone, and anyone who trespasses past the fence is prosecuted. But 2 weeks ago, someone sent me a drone video, taken at midnight. Infrared lens, clear as day. There's still movement inside the chapel's footprint. No people, no birds, just a rhythmic shifting, like something swaying back and forth in the dark, and a pulse of heat, exactly every 27 seconds. You won't find it on the floor plans. The original architectural blueprints of the restoration compound show 13 guest rooms in the west wing, numbered 1 through 13. Simple, sequential. A straight hallway lined with uniform doors, ending at a storage closet. Except the hallway doesn't quite end there. If you walk it at night, and only at night, you'll notice something strange. The lights flicker a little longer near the end. The wall feels warmer. And sometimes, if you pause by room 13 and listen closely, you'll hear it. A quiet click, like a lock disengaging. They call it room 14. Officially, it doesn't exist. Maintenance staff are told it's an urban legend. Pilgrims are warned to avoid loitering in that wing after 10 p.m. But those who've worked the West Wing long enough will all tell you the same thing. Sometimes the door just appears. Not every night, not for everyone. But when it does, you know, the wood looks older than the rest of the compound, weathered, dry. A small brass handle and no room number, just a carved symbol near the top. A square, solid black, no frame. Several people have gone inside. Fewer have come out. The most well-known case is Elliot Sayers, a restoration engineer assigned to inspect the heating ducts. He radioed in at 10:41 p.m. saying he'd found an unlisted room past room 13, said it was ice cold, no insulation, all concrete, claimed it felt much larger on the inside. Then the signal cut out. They found his headset on the floor 2 days later, still transmitting, still humming. When they reviewed the audio recording, the last 12 seconds were just breathing. But not his. Others who've returned from room 14 rarely speak. Those who do describe variations of the same experience. The room changes shape. There are no lights, yet they can see. And something is already in there, waiting. One pilgrim described it as a mirror you can't look away from. Another, a former psychiatric nurse, said it was like stepping into your own funeral. They all mentioned the same detail. There's always a second door inside room 14, but it never opens, unless someone else is already inside. The Morningtide Council denies the room exists, but in a maintenance ledger from 2003, filed under Anomalous Infrastructure, Do Not Disclose, there's a single line item that's never been repeated. Room 14 sealed. No further entry permitted. She said not to let it breathe. Who she is has never been explained. But the word breathe appears again in the wall etchings recovered from the chapel ruins, and in the whispering audio loop recorded under the dormitory floorboards in 2011. And again, last month when a child visiting the West Wing tour stared at the empty wall past room 13 and asked, "Why is that black door crying?" There is a bell tower on the northeast side of the compound. Tall, narrow, and half-swallowed by creeping ivy, it's one of the oldest surviving structures, built even before the main chapel. It leans slightly westward, as if listening. The door at its base has been sealed since 1985. Not locked, sealed, first with wood, then with cement, then with 13 iron nails driven into the frame in the shape of a circle. A placard on the door reads, "Condemned structure. Do not enter, per order of the Morningtide Council, Reverend 411. But even now, even sealed, people hear the bell. It only rings once. Never a full chime, just the start of one, a single low tone, as if the bell were beginning to swing, then suddenly stopped. No one's seen it move. Several attempts have been made to inspect the bell tower over the years. Scaffolding was erected in 1992, but the foreman, Paul Meerstadt, quit after the second day. He later told his wife he had a dream where the bell cracked open like an egg and something climbed out backwards. In 2008, a drone was flown up through one of the upper slats. It lost signal 3 seconds after entering. When it was recovered, the footage was corrupted, except for one frame, a wide-angle shot of the bell, and beneath it, a figure, arched backward. Arms out, mouth open as if screaming, but no face. Compound lore calls it the Silent Bell. According to recovered fragments of the lost Fourth Codex, it was forged from reclaimed iron, taken from the ruins of a burned-out orphanage. One page describes its purpose cryptically: to unhear what was once spoken, to contain the third sound. There is no clarification of what the third sound refers to, but those who live near the tower, particularly those in the east dormitories, have reported vivid dreams, shared dreams. One child described being inside the bell as it was rung, feeling the air be. A lead, an elderly groundskeeper, said she woke with dried blood on her fingertips. Another resident, now missing, left a note on their bed. "It rang again last night. Something in me stopped." And yet, no formal investigation has been launched. The Morningtide Council's official statement is that the bell has not rung in over 50 years, and any reports to the contrary are stress-induced hallucinations related to elevation sickness and temperature shifts. Except there's one problem with that explanation. Every person who's ever heard the bell, every single one, has described the same thing. It doesn't sound like it's coming from above. They call it that because no one remembers why it was built. There are no blueprints for it, no official designation. It doesn't appear on the compound's maps, old or new, and yet everyone knows where it is. At the end of hallway B7, beyond the supply closets, there's a narrow metal door with no markings. It opens with no resistance, no lock, and no handle, just a smooth circular plate where a knob should be. Inside is a windowless, hexagonal room. Concrete walls, always the same temperature regardless of season. At the center, a plain wooden chair bolted to the floor, and surrounding it, 6 filing cabinets, 1 per wall, each drawer labeled only by a symbol, no words. The symbols change. No one knows who placed the chair there. No one knows what's inside the drawers, because every time someone goes in to check, they forget. This has been verified. An experiment in 2003 had a volunteer enter the room with a tape recorder strapped to their chest. They were instructed to describe everything they did out loud. The recording captured the following. Door creaks. "Okay, I'm inside. It smells like old paper. 6 cabinets. All different shapes on them. I'll start with the one with the circle/triangle thing." Pause. Soft click. "Oh, I think that's mine, from when I was little." Silence for 8 seconds. "I forgot about that. I forgot," whispers. "I forgot. Long pause. Then, clearly, "What am I doing in here?" Confused tone. "Was someone talking?" The recording ends with the sound of the door opening again. When the subject exited, they had no memory of going in. They were holding a folded slip of paper with the words, "It's not gone, it's waiting." Several who've entered return visibly shaken, others strangely calm. One woman spent 23 minutes in the room and emerged claiming she'd spoken to her sister, who had died 3 years prior. Another man opened his mouth to say something, then burst into tears. He couldn't explain why. When asked what he saw, he simply said, "Nothing new, just what I was trying not to remember." The Morningtide Council has issued warnings discouraging unsanctioned entry into room B7, but no efforts have been made to seal or remove it. An internal memo from 2010 reads, "The room is a valve. Pressure builds. The room releases it. Do not interfere with the room." Outside the door, scratched faintly into the wall, are the words, "If you forget why you came, leave immediately." Some of the scratches appear fresh. They were first noticed on camera, not in person. In fact, they only appear on camera. During a routine review of overnight surveillance in Sector E, an unoccupied storage wing, analysts noticed a figure standing motionless in frame number 3387. At first, they assumed it was a trick of the shadows, but then it appeared again in Tyra 3388 and number 3389. Same spot, same posture. What stood out wasn't the stillness. It was the eyes, wide, glassy, unblinking. When the security team went to investigate, the hallway was empty. No signs of forced entry, no heat signatures. But on camera, the figure was still there, now slightly closer. Frame number 33392, 15 feet away. Frame 333, 10 feet. Frame 394, 6 feet. Then it vanished. Since then, they've been recorded in at least 7 other sectors, always between the hours of 2:30 and 3 o'clock a.m. They do not move when observed in real time. They do not register on infrared or motion sensors. They do not reflect light in ways that match known human physiology. And they never blink. Researchers attempting to enhance the footage noted that the facial features seem approximate, like someone describing a face from memory and then sculpting it in clay. Too symmetrical, mouth too still, skin texture subtly wrong, like smooth wax with faint seams. One analyst compared their appearance to a child's drawing of a person, animated just enough to be unnerving. Attempts to confront them physically have failed. When agents position themselves where the figures should be, there's nothing there. But after the fact, footage always shows them standing right behind the agents, close enough to touch. They never do. Patterns have emerged. They appear more frequently after prolonged power outages. Their presence often correlates with increased memory lapses among staff. Several personnel exposed to the footage report episodes of sleep paralysis. In every case, so they claim to see someone standing near their bed, watching, not blinking. One technician resigned after reviewing a week's worth of footage. His parting words, "They're getting better at pretending to be people." The Morningtide Council has classified these entities as Type 3 visual residuals. Research into their origin is ongoing, but a note in the internal server directory marked "Eyes Only" contains a single line. Do not speak to them. If they respond, it's already too late. Scrawled in ink beneath monitor E30, when you blink, they learn. There is no official blueprint for room A314, yet it exists. According to archival documents, there is no record of its construction, no requisition orders, no wiring plans, no architectural footprint. Multiple engineers have confirmed it should not be there. And yet, on sub-level 3A, between the sealed medical wing and the defunct lift shaft, sits a gray metal door marked simply 304 Feen. Attempts to open it manually fail. The handle turns, but the door refuses to budge, as if it's locked from the other side. But sometimes, late at night, janitorial staff report hearing it click open, followed by the faint creak of it swinging ajar, just out of view of the hallway camera. When staff are sent to investigate, the door is closed again. No one admits to opening it, and no one has gone inside. Not intentionally. Incident log 3114A details a maintenance worker who went missing for 4 hours and 19 minutes. Upon return, he was disoriented, dehydrated, and insistent that he had simply been cleaning 3-4. When reminded that the room isn't listed on his schedule and that he had no access key, he grew visibly confused. "It was open," he said. "It's always open when it wants to be cleaned." He could not recall what the inside looked like, except for a single repeating phrase. "No corners, no shadows. The lights are too loud." A routine psychological evaluation deemed him unfit for continued employment. He now resides in Facility 6S, where he won't go near doors. Curiously, internal climate sensors sometimes show abrupt temperature drops in the corridor outside 3-4 by as much as 15 degrees in under a minute. Accompanying this is the recurring scent of wet plaster and ozone. Security footage is often corrupted within a 10-meter radius of the door. Recordings will play fine until 03:14 a.m. At exactly that timestamp, the footage skips 314 frames. Every night, precisely, several proposals to breach the door with plasma cutters or high-frequency sonics have failed, not due to technical limits, but because teams refuse to proceed. Each time, lead technicians report sudden onset nausea, migraines, or intrusive thoughts described as "not mine." One such technician carved the words "it built itself" into the floor with the tip of his multi-tool before collapsing. A redacted transcript recovered from Terminal Delta 4 includes the following exchange between Council Member Argento and a senior architect. Argento: "If no one built it, how did it get here?" Architect: "I think we're asking the wrong question." Argento: "Which is?" Architect: "Why does it keep adding furniture?" Since May 23rd, a light has been visible through the crack under the door. It pulses in a 13-second rhythm, matching exactly the resting heart rate of the facility's former director, who died in 1997. Initiated 1983. Status: indefinitely suspended. Access level 7. Cenotaph clearance only. Executive summary: rebirth of subject state consciousness through non-linear mnemonic reassembly. Project Palingenesis was conceived as a post-biological continuity experiment, an attempt to preserve the functional essence of high-value personnel beyond biological death. At its core, the project revolved around a classified device known only as the mnemonic recompiler, constructed using theoretical schematics sourced from the so-called Larkspur documents. See Section 2.3. The recompiler was designed to scan residual cognitive footprints, neurological echoes left in the aftermath of brain death, and reconstruct a simulated consciousness capable of reactive engagement. The ethical implications were debated internally, but ultimately overridden via Directive 8U. The mind is infrastructure. If it persists, so does the institution. First successful instance: Subject Zoe, redacted. A Level 5 analyst suffered fatal brain trauma during the containment breach of O. Section 6. The Lacuna event. Within 3 minutes of death, her mnemonic remnants were routed into the recompiler. Results exceeded expectations. Within 18 hours, Zoe's reconstructed consciousness displayed self-awareness, memory retention, and even sarcasm. She asked for coffee. She recognized former colleagues. She refused to acknowledge that she had died. Key transcript. Session 2. Researcher. Do you know where you are? Subject to. Not sure. I assume hell since you're here. Researcher. You died, Zoe. Do you remember that? Subject Zoe. No, but I've seen your hair. That feels like proof enough. Psychia evaluations confirmed it. We believed she was alive. And more concerningly, she was becoming aware that we didn't. At 0813 on day 6, the recompiler overheated. Cooling systems were int. No hardware faults were found. The logs show Zoe screaming, then laughter, then a system-wide crash. Upon reboot, she was still active, despite being manually shut down. Her new response, you tried to end me. You can't. I'm upstream now. After a council vote, Project Palingenesis was terminated. The recompiler was sealed in Vault Theta, surrounded by a Faraday lattice and active sound-dampening fields. But the logs continue to update. No power, no uplink. And yet, every 11 days, new entries appear in the system, time-stamped 0314 AM, referencing staff who have not been entered into the system yet. Unexplained log entry, dated 17 months in the future. Director Mallory was right. Death was too small a box for us. I see it now. The doors aren't for going out. They're for letting something in. Date of incident, 2001. Security status, global lockdown protocol. Priority red. Personnel involved. Director Mallory, deceased. Agent K. Reza, missing. Site 09. Clearance level required. 8. Corvus Black, executive summary. Section 13 details the most consequential breach in the organization's history, the Severance event, a sustained temporal causal disjunction originating from deep storage vault. Theta 3. Site 09. The event precipitated the irreversible loss of consensus reality across 14 verified sites, multiple Level 7 fatalities, and the reclassification of reality integrity from a passive observational metric to an actively monitored containment priority. Precursor signs. The first anomaly occurred 43 minutes after the unsealing of Vault Theta 3 for reassessment of the dormant mnemonic recompiler. See Section 11, Project Palingenesis. The sequence of events as logged is impossible to corroborate due to inconsistent local timelines. Key observation. Agent Reza, final transmission. There's a loop, but it's not repeating. Every cycle's a draft, closer to something not ours. Sensor data revealed sudden topological inversions in the sub-basement corridor. Matter folded, light reversed trajectory. Personnel encountered mirror duplicates of themselves, displaying non-synchronous behavior, including reversed speech, inverted physiology, and predictive hostility. The inversion point. At 0314 AM, coinciding with the regular phantom log entries from Section 11, a full severance event manifested. Personnel ceased to exist. No death, no trace, no records. Only mnemonic shadows detectable by residual psychic apparatus, Site 09's. Central Archive began overwriting itself, replacing classified logs with first-person narratives in an unknown tense. Surveillance recorded Director Mallory arguing with his own reflection for 6 minutes before Vanais. Xing mid-sentence. The mirror remained cold to the touch, yet no reflection has been seen since. Reconstitution attempt. Protocol. Chrysalis was enacted in a desperate attempt to anchor remaining consciousness-stable personnel. 4 of 9 subjects survived but exhibited cross-contamination of memory and identity. One survivor, subject Helena, possessed exact memory of future events, including the collapse of Site 13, a facility that does not and never has existed. From her report, I woke up with someone else's name in my mouth. I think it used to be mine. The worst part, it feels more right than the one I've always had. Outcome. The severance event concluded exactly 9 minutes after it began. All clocks on site restarted from 00:02. Site 09 remains under full quarantine. The mnemonic recompiler was destroyed, but sections of it continue to appear inside locked rooms despite repeated decontamination. All attempts to contain the conceptual aftershock have failed. Memory bleed has been detected in personnel who were never stationed at Site 09. Dreams recur, reflections speak without prompting. Entire files delete themselves and leave handwritten annotations in their place. Always in the same script. Always signed. Zoe Mallory. She was never officially born. Directive from Oversight Council. All mirrors in secure sites are to be replaced with one-way observation glass. Effective immediately, no personnel is permitted to recite their own name aloud after 3:00 a.m. local time. Date of incident: 2001. Security status: global lockdown protocol. Priority red. Personnel involved. Director Mallory, deceased. Agent K. Reza, missing. Site 09. Clearance level required. 8. Corvus Black, executive summary. Section 13 details the most consequential breach in the organization's history, the severance event, a sustained temporal causal disjunction originating from deep storage vault. Theta 3. Site 09. The event precipitated the irreversible loss of consensus reality across 14 verified sites, multiple Level 7 fatalities, and the reclassification of reality integrity from a passive observational metric to an actively monitored containment priority. Precursor signs. The first anomaly occurred 43 minutes after the unsealing of Vault Theta 3 for reassessment of the dormant mnemonic recompiler. See Section 11, Project Palingenesis. The sequence of events as logged is impossible to corroborate due to inconsistent local timelines. Key observation: Agent Reza, final transmission. There's a loop, but it's not repeating. Every cycle's a draft, closer to something not ours. Sensor data revealed sudden topological inversions in the sub-basement corridor. Matter folded, light reversed trajectory. Personnel encountered mirror duplicates of themselves, displaying non-synchronous behavior, including reversed speech, inverted physiology, and predictive hostility. The inversion point. At 03:14 a.m., coinciding with the regular phantom log entries from Section 11, a full severance event manifested. Personnel ceased to exist. No death, no trace, no records. Only mnemonic shadows detectable by residual psychic apparatus, Site 09's. Central Archive began overwriting itself, replacing classified logs with first-person narratives in an unknown tense. Surveillance recorded Director Mallory arguing with his own reflection for 6 minutes before Vanais. Xing mid-sentence. The mirror remained cold to the touch, yet no reflection has been seen since. Reconstitution attempt. Protocol. Chrysalis was enacted in a desperate attempt to anchor remaining consciousness-stable personnel. 4 of 9 subjects survived but exhibited cross-contamination of memory and identity. One survivor, subject Helena, possessed exact memory of future events, including the collapse of Site-13, a facility that does not and never has existed. From her report, I woke up with someone else's name in my mouth. I think it used to be mine. The worst part, it feels more right than the one I've always had. Outcome. The severance event concluded exactly 9 minutes after it began. All clocks on site restarted from 00:02. Site-09 remains under full quarantine. The mnemonic recompiler was destroyed, but sections of it continue to appear inside locked rooms despite repeated decontamination. All attempts to contain the conceptual aftershock have failed. Memory bleed has been detected in personnel who were never stationed at Site-09. Dreams recur, reflections speak without prompting. Entire files delete themselves and leave handwritten annotations in their place, always in the same script, always signed. Zoe Mallory. She was never officially born. Directive from Oversight Council. All mirrors in secure sites are to be replaced with one-way observation glass. Effective immediately, no personnel is permitted to recite their own name aloud after 3:00 a.m. local time. Date range /2001. Ongoing. Classification. Dream class. Mimetic crossover event. Associated event. Post-severance aftermath. Clearance level required. 9. Sidian Ascendant. Overview is Section 14. Documents the persistent cognitive and ontological contamination following the severance event. These disturbances manifest predominantly during REM cycles and involve recurring dreamscapes shared across disconnected subjects, regardless of geographic separation, conscious belief, or prior exposure to Project Palingenesis materials. This phenomenon has since been designated Phenomenon PD, Delta, unofficially referred to by field agents as the burn path. Commonalities in affected individuals. Previously unaffected individuals begin to share identical dreams within 3 to 5 days of secondary exposure to Site-09 personnel or archival materials. All reports describe a spiraling corridor of ash, with whispering voices speaking in fractured polyglot. Subjects experience hyperreal lucidity, with tactile sensations and even residual injuries upon waking, e.g. burns, phantom pain, bleeding from the tongue. Recurrent imagery, a door suspended in open space, outlined in ember light. A voice saying, "This is the last time we will try to save you." A burning child walking backward, repeating your full name in reverse. Note from Deep Dream Research Team, Dr. Emra Kovic, D-Class Memory Archive. We've seen mimetic infections before. We've studied dream syndromes. But this is not a dream. It is a place. It remembers us. Unauthorized incident log. Dream spill. Security violation ID 091Z. On/2002, 13 personnel across 3 separate containment sites reported identical dreams on the same night. Each reported waking inside their own dream where time functioned backwards except for the sun, which continued to rise and set normally. Every surface bore a burnt handprint in ash. A figure with no face but a mouth on each palm offered a choice: wake up and forget, or sleep forever and remember. Only 3 chose to wake. 2 were found in catatonic states, and the third, Agent Tessa Muir, recorded a 12-minute transmission in a language unknown to linguistics AI. Her final words, before full neural shutdown: "It's coming through the cracks in me. We don't dream it anymore. It dreams us." Corvus Black Observations. Psycholinguistic analysis of shared dream transcripts shows a convergent shift in conceptual syntax toward non-human patterning. Grammar bends toward recursion and conceptual loops, speech that begins to define itself as it is spoken. Subjects begin to invent words they do not understand, yet which carry meaning to other dreamers. This emerging vocabulary has been compiled into Lexicon Null, currently 318 entries long, Referee, appended section 14a. Select terms include serum, the act of trying not to remember something that is about to happen. Thorn veil, the thin skin between waking and fire. Ichor clock, a moment when a secret becomes aware of you. Warning. Due to the active, memetically contagious nature of this section, all personnel accessing Section 14 must submit to a 72-hour linguistic quarantine post-exposure. Observers have reported dream echoes while awake, typically beginning with the phrase, "I saw you last night." No one remembers who says it first. Council note. Redacted excerpt. We believed we had breached the dream. We were wrong. It had already bled into us, and now it watches itself through our eyes. Next, Section 15, Threshold Biology and the Self-Eroding Body, say continue to proceed. Date range, /2003, 2000. Ongoing in subsidiary protocols. Classification, Anatomic Liminal Tissue Study. Affiliated Project, Palingenesis. See also SIRE. Protocol 3, Subderma Null Index. Clearance required 9. Obsidian Ascendant plus Gestalt Biocode. Summary. Section 15 details the physiological transformations observed in subject class Yao, Omega returnees, those recovered from threshold breach events. Refer Section 12, Dream Spill Zones. Refer Section 14, or unassisted re-entry from non-Euclidean geographies within Zone Null. These individuals present unstable bodily configurations which challenge existing models of human anatomy, physics, and temporal cohesion. The phenomenon is internally referred to as self-erosion, or the unmaking inside the shape. Stage progression, Class EA manifestations. Pre-erosion, latency window 3 to 5 days post-re-entry. No visible anomalies. Internal MRI reveals ghost organs, fully formed replicas that flicker in and out of phase. Subjects express dream-induced synesthesia, e.g., I can smell the color of blood behind walls. Stage 1. Anatomical drift. Skeletal structure shifts slowly over time, recorded up to 1.3 cm/hour. Subjects report forgetting where their bones are. Voluntary muscles begin to respond to external thought forms, not their own. Mirrors cease to reflect accurate anatomy. Stage 2. Perceptual echo, loss of interior. Skin becomes semi-reflective, registering thermal changes before they occur. Body begins producing non-human biological compounds, e.g. ash protein sweat, transparent marrow. Some subjects report dreams of themselves watching their own organs prey. Stage 3. Threshold bloom. Spatial shedding. External flesh becomes unstable, peeling off in geometric segments, squares, spirals, recursive glyphs. Subjects can pass through thin matter, e.g. glass, dense smoke, wit, haut, rupturing surface tension. Voices of unknown origin begin speaking from inside the subject, in plural. We are watching the mind remember the skin. Incident log. Case, Omega-5, Terran D. Recovered from Corridor Zeta after 94 hours unsupervised. Exhibited full stage 3 symptoms. attempted to draw its own nervous system in reverse, using fingertips dipped in a secretion later classified as proto-liquid consciousness. Spoke exclusively in medical Latin for 72 hours, including terms not documented in any historical record. Final quote before disappearance, while under biostasis. I don't have a body anymore. I just remember the shape it left in the fire. Status, lost to threshold. Biolocation attempts unsuccessful. Theoretical note. Liminal tissue theory. Threshold biology suggests that certain human bodies are never meant to return once breached beyond ontological constraints. Re-entry destabilizes the concept of form, leading to erosion from within. Bodies are forgotten by themselves, and identity begins to decompose in the shape of self-awareness. The skin is not a container, it's a suggestion, and it can be revoked. Dr. M. Radine, Threshold Biology Division, Current Protocols. All Omega-class returnees are to be isolated under 6th-order biometric shielding. Subjects exhibiting Stage 1 symptoms must be terminated before memory drift begins. REFAS, Sub-Protocol Mercy Glass. Mirror testing to be administered every 12 hours. If the reflection is seen breathing independently, initiate Ashlock. Project Palingenesis Corollary. This form of biological failure is not a malfunction, but rather an invitation, or perhaps replication, of non-human anatomical logic. Evidence suggests the threshold is attempting to learn our shape through erosion and mimicry. Further inquiry suspended under the Black Veil Doctrine until language becomes stable enough to describe the body that remains after forgetting itself. Date range, Aish 1981. Present. Mapping cycles remain unstable. Classification, non-local topology, sentient cartography, affiliated project, Azure Ward. See also, City Without Gates. Its initiative, Lost Atlas Protocols. Clearance required, 10, ultraviolet sable plus topographic anomaly, sigil, overview. Section 16 addresses the persistent but non-consensual appearance of a spatial anomaly designated as the Unfinished City, a place reported by explorers, dreamers, disappeared persons, and occasionally machines left running too long in solitude. Unlike other dream spill or threshold phenomena, the Unfinished City does not exist in a single fixed form. It resists mapping, naming, or continuous observation. Attempts to chart it result in cartographic corruption, recursive geographies, and map-borne madness. The city is not a destination. It is a pattern that finds you. Primary features. As documented by overlapping witness accounts, no fixed entrance appears through dreams, backdoor stairwells, hallucinations, or forgotten rooms between floors. GPS coordinates fail. Visitors say, I didn't get there. I noticed I was already inside. Architecture in flux. Buildings rearrange when unobserved. Streets bend toward thoughts the subject hasn't had yet. Walls bear unfinished sentences in languages no living culture uses. Doors lead to other doors, none of which exit. Citizens, presumed. Shadows that cast no source. Whispered voices that speak in questions only you have ever asked yourself. Reflections of the subject, often older, missing something. Eye, limb, name. No two reports describe the same inhabitants. Consistency appears to be punished. The sky is wrong, often described as the color of bone remembering heat. Stars appear in concentric spirals. Some blink in Morse, some blink back. On one occasion, case cartograph-D11, the sky whispered the observer, his birth name backward, causing neural hemorrhage. Mapping attempts failed. Cartography Unit 6A, Embedded Surveyor System, sent into a stable zone believed to be a plaza. Returned after 22 minutes. Footage showed 21 hours of traversal. Map overlay produced a Mobius geometry, terminating in the symbol used in ancient alchemical texts for therefore, as above. All mapping paper used in the process became completely transparent after use. Test subject, Mara Dreamspill Class 3, claimed to walk a full district that reminded me of memories I forgot. Drew map in charcoal, all buildings labeled only with feelings. Regret, yellow, my brother's voice. A room I closed forever. Map burned itself slowly over 3 nights, emitting the scent of old coins and grave dirt. Recurring anchor locations. Though always displaced, some locales resurface in various configurations. The library that hums. Books cannot be opened until you forget what you wanted to read. The bell tower that rings for no god. Sound causes vertigo and the inability to remember your own handwriting. The milk house, a boarded-up shop where milk is sold that tastes like yesterday's dreams. No vendor visible. The street called If. A road with no curvature, but which always brings you back to a different beginning. Key anomaly. The cartographer who stayed. Case, subject null EM. Reported mapping the city by becoming part of it. Final journal entry. I have given up knowing where I am. I am now where knowing goes to hide. A map was found tattooed across the subject's bones. Map altered post-mortem. New streets added daily. Subject now classified as urban liminal construct. Theoretical note, sentient geography. Data suggests the unfinished city is not a city, but a spatial memory of something once real, now decaying in collective unconsciousness. The more one seeks to define it, the more it rearranges to avoid definition. It does not want to be mapped, it wants to be understood without being known. The city finishes itself only in your forgetting. We end our journey not with a conclusion, but with a place that refuses one. The unfinished city is not on any map, not because it cannot be mapped, but because it does not want to be. Its buildings shift when you stop looking. Its doors open into your own thoughts. And its sky is not a sky at all, but a memory of one. Faint whispering rises in background, unintelligible words, reversed speech. Travelers don't go there. They realize, all too late, they never left. There are citizens. You might meet one in a mirror or in a reflection that doesn't match, or hear one whisper your name backwards in a room you've never been in but always somehow knew. Brief static pulse. The audio wavers, then resumes. Maps have been made, and those maps burned themselves. Some say the city draws itself, through us, street by street, memory by memory, until you forget where you were or who. The library that hums, the bell tower that rings for no god, the street called If. You've seen them, or will. Pause. Ambient fades into silence. There was once a cartographer. He stayed too long. When they found him, his bones told a story the city had written, a story still being written. So if you find yourself in a city that doesn't quite align with reality, a street that feels like a question you forgot to ask, or a door you swear wasn't there yesterday, don't draw a map, don't name the street, and above all, don't look back. Long pause. Faint city wind. Screen fades to black. You are where knowing goes to hide.